To another episode of Marketing Minutes. Today we have Hunter McKinley here from Yak, which sounds different than what you think it might be. Well, welcome, Hunter.
How's it going? Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so Hunter, let's actually start with the elevator pitch of Yak. Basically, today we just want to hear about your company, what you're doing, what kind of made you successful, and before we infer any weird things about the word Yak, why don't you tell us what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So Yak originally stood for yelling across cubicles. It was later changed to just the word Yak. But basically, it's voice messaging for remote tools, for remote teams, especially right now with everything going on in the world. The world decided to try remote out. There's over 2 billion people now that are going remote, and the numbers keep climbing. You look at Facebook, Shopify, Twitter, they've all decided that they're going to basically become remote full time. And so we kind of bridge the gap between something like a Slack message and a full on Zoom meeting, just like this.
That's amazing. So basically, I've used Yak, and what I really use it for is the moments when I have so much to say that it's painful to write it out in a Slack message. So instead, what I do is I just Yak it. Basically, I just send them like a voice message, which over iMessage is an absolute catastrophe. So a lot of people usually use like WhatsApp for that. But I know Yak has some more added features besides, just sending a voice message via WhatsApp. What are some of those features?
Yeah, what's really interesting is that iMessage, we actually did a whole day of just remote or just of just voice messaging tools, and I did it mostly with iMessage. Some of my co-founders did it with WhatsApp, and it's crazy that as soon as you send a voice message, it only lasts 2 minutes, and then if you save it, it goes to your voice memos on your iPhone. So it's just this really clunky experience, and we just scrapped the whole thing, built our own tool, which transcribes every single message. So even if you don't have time to like listen to it, or some folks are saying I work with kids and I don't want them to like hear everything that I'm doing. I want to just be able to read it. So every message is transcribed. And then if you do have your AirPods in and you do want to listen to it, you can speed it up to like 2x. And so we're really excited because the last few weeks, actually since our last phone call, I put out a survey. The survey was basically the same thing that Superhuman does. There's like the basic 4 questions. They all kind of revolve around how disappointed would you be if you stopped using Yak? And overwhelmingly, we found out that most of our customers are founders. And these founders are a particular set of founders. They focus primarily on efficiency. So a lot of the tools that we're incorporating now, since even the last time you probably have even used it, have all revolved around efficiency. So for example, people said, I want even more controls over my transcriptions. Can I send a message in English and it be received in French and have the transcription that way? Can I see the full transcription? I want a 1-button copy and paste of that transcription. Even shortcuts. A lot of founders are also developers, and so they want to be able to click like Command K to quickly start a voice message with somebody, just like that they do in Slack. So what's really interesting is that as we're getting feedback, actually right after this call, I have to send another one of those surveys. So I'll be excited to share with you what we find. But what's really interesting is like listening to our users, we actually discovered that people are using it for things that we've never even thought was possible. So it's been cool because most people are actually, it's weird. I can't definitively say this, but I'm finding that there's some sort of affinity between WhatsApp users, people that listen to podcasts, and then also people of Latin American descent, just for whatever reason, really find Yak useful.
That's really interesting. I think, one of the things my best friend and I, she lives in Germany, we do is we send each other voice memos, right? Because we have so much to say. And I always love sending them because it's the easiest thing for me, but I hate receiving them because it takes me I have to actually listen to 7 minutes of talking, If I were to read it, it'd be like 2.5 minutes. So it's really interesting that you guys have solved that special pain point. And I mean, you said so much good stuff just in that, in that little part. One of the things I'm really curious about is what other methods have you used to figure out people's pain points and kind of get your business a little bit closer to to what really is the product market fit, right? Like you mentioned the must-have survey by Sean Ellis, like how disappointed would you be if Yak went away tomorrow, which I think is amazing. What's some other stuff you guys have used?
One insane feature of Yak is that as soon as you come onto our platform, you are greeted by me. It's not a personal message. Every single person gets this message. We've actually since renamed it from Hunter McKinley over to Yak support. But one benefit that gives us is that I get to talk to every single one of our users. If anybody has any feedback, any pain points, they have a direct line of communication to my cell phone. It literally comes straight to my phone. Like I can like open my Yak app right now and I can see basically our customer support tickets. We didn't intend on Yak being that way, but we've intentionally kept it in. So a lot of people said, I don't want to talk directly to you. I don't want, my customer, or, some people have clients, but I don't want people seeing you. I want them to see like Yak support. So that's fine. So they were concerned about privacy, but we still wanted to keep that line of communication open. So a lot of what I do on a daily basis is actually just talking directly to our users. So even after I send the survey, I actually hand respond, personalize every single email to that person based on what they said in that survey. So I'm not only getting their verbal feedback, but we're also scheduling meetings. And after every single survey, I'm hand emailing them. So I just want to be on the pulse of every single one of my users. And I just put out a tweet the other day, you might have seen it. If you comment on anything of mine, whether it's on Instagram, mostly Twitter, because that's where I'm biggest right this second, or LinkedIn, you will get a response from me. And that has been such a game changer, because before I felt like I was kind of shooting in the dark. And as a marketer, it's really important for you to be able to be that guide of who your users are. And I feel like before I was doing that, I didn't have my finger on the pulse. And so now I just try in every capacity, even the Instagram stories, every capacity, to just reach out to these people and just get a feeling and say, like, what's your feedback? What are some of the pain points that you're using or that you have? And like, what are the tools that you're using to solve them right now? And that's been enormously helpful.
Yeah, I think you bring up such an important point. As a marketer, I think one of the biggest things and biggest misses I see when I start working with startups is they actually have no idea and haven't talked to their customer in a really long time to figure out why people are really using their product, right? A lot of times people will say to me, oh, people love our product because it's sustainable. But then the real reason when I go and I actually do customer interviews like you are doing is like, no, people like that it's sustainable. But the reason they actually purchase it is because it tastes great. So I think that's amazing that you guys do that. And you spoke a little bit about that as your role. So tell me a little bit about the team and how you guys are kind of made up of, who you are made up of, maybe even about how Yak started, because right now I know you guys just got a lot of funding. So it'd be interesting to see what was the road from start to funding.
Awesome question. Yak's journey actually begins at my first job. So my first job was working for a company called Next ID. That was actually basically co-founded by one of my co-founders, Justin. He started it when he was, I think, 17 or 18, and then it IPO'd. But one of the cool things about that was that I came into the office one day, I was like, I'm just going to help out one of my friends. So I started sweeping floors, and next thing you know, I have a job working for my co-founder, Justin. So one cool little sidebar to that story is that some of my designs were actually up on the NASDAQ building when they finally IPO'd. So he took that, ended up starting his own agency called J Mitch Consulting, which kind of rolled into So Friendly Designs, which I helped co-found on paper, basically. Employee number one, I guess. So we started this design agency, and part of the problem with the startup that we were working at was like, it seemed like not a whole lot, like you were just talking about, not a whole lot of people were asking customers, do you need a battery, it was a smart wallet. Do you need a battery life that's going to last 14 years? We didn't know, right? That's something that we spent an enormous amount of time on, but we didn't know. And so a lot of what we did at this new design agency was ask customers. It was a user-focused design agency, and we just built for other people. Part of our pitch, being in Orlando, it's not exactly Silicon Valley. So part of our pitch was saying, look, we know that this is your first time starting an app and building something. We're entrepreneurs, or it's for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. So we've been through this journey. And so we would build products every 6 to 12 months. I mean, we were joking right before Yak started that we were on a hot streak because we started syrup for startups. So if you go to getsyrup.com, it's deals for startups. We were just trying to provide more value to our customers, and we got exclusive deals. That was basically acquired. We had other, I can go into basically all of them, but they were either acquired or purchased or funded by like Adobe and Envision. And there was all sorts of products coming out. And finally Yak came out. It was this yelling across cubicles. We just applied to an online hackathon by Product Hunt. It's called Product Hunt Makers Festivals. Their very first one back in November of 2018. We built yelling across cubicles. We didn't know what to name it. So one of our designers was like, yelling across cubicles. So we launched that in November. And then by December, we had won in the remote category. And we had 2,000 downloads within 5 or 6 days or less. We have a whole story about it on our website, but we just had enormous support for this little side project that we put together. And then in January, we were talking in a hotel room at 11 o'clock at night. We were in Vegas for CES, completely sober. And we were just talking about life. And then all of a sudden, someone that we didn't know saw us on Product Hunt and tweeted to our now like first ever investor and was like, hey, Adam, you should check these guys out. We got on the phone within like 40 seconds, literally like he said, we should talk. And we were on the phone with him on speakerphone and he was offering us over $50,000 right off the bat. So what's really cool about the whole Yak story is that we didn't intend on creating a company. We didn't intend on raising money. It all sort of fell into our laps. And so to date, actually, we just had a press release go out about 2 hours ago, which is a little surreal, but to date, we've raised over $1.5 million. So all from a tweet, which is really cool.
Wow. I mean, I feel like that's like the American dream story, right? You start working with your friend, you go from sweeping floors to being a co-founder of a $1.5 million funded startup. And I think my favorite thing is that it's such a cliche story, but it worked so well, right? So what is the hardest thing about being a co-founder of a startup?
I can tell you what it used to be. Are you actually, let me ask you, are you specifically referring to having a co-founder versus not, or just running a startup in general?
I actually love that spin on the question. So I'd say both. Like just running a startup in general was my original intention, but I'd love to hear about, your the benefits and struggles of having a co-founder, because you and I actually know each other from a venture that has been through some of those struggles. So both, absolutely.
Okay, because I like both questions. So the benefits of having co-founders is that you have roles and responsibilities. So for example, we raised just over $1.5 million, and I was virtually uninvolved in that. When I say uninvolved, I mean like really like talking to investors, taking the meetings. I was really hands off. What's really cool is that like my co-founder, Justin, he's the CEO, he's pitching, taking the meetings, talking to all the investors. And then my other co-founder, Jordan, he's really the finance guy. He's really good with finding details that no one else will find. And he's just got a super logical mind. And so what's really nice is that I can sort of offload that and just completely trust them and say like, look, I know you guys are going to handle it. And they've gotten us this far. So like that's one really cool thing about having co-founders is that like, you get to say, okay, that's your thing. I can be hands off. I can go focus on getting us users. I don't have to worry about fundraising. So that's like one of the benefits. One of the downsides is if you don't have that in place. So like we didn't realize how meticulous Jordan can be until like we started fundraising, which was just over a year ago. So like it's really important to decide on like who's going to do what, how is this going to get from point A to point B, and who's going to be the directly responsible individual, the DRI. And so that's been the challenge, but also one of the greatest benefits. We talk about it all the time, how it almost would be impossible for us to do it if it was just an individual. And YC puts out stuff all the time about how like the average successful team is like 2 to 4 co-founders. I think 4 is too many, but definitely 3 has been magical for us. I forget your other question. It was, the hard thing about startups. With any startup, it is always about finding product market fit. So like with an established company, you get the benefits of uh, that legacy branding and that legacy customers. And like when you're in a startup, you don't know what's going to work. You don't know what the product market fit looks like. In fact, I would say Yak is on its way, but we definitely haven't found product market fit yet. And so what's really cool is that, like, you know, that's its benefits and its downsides. But one really cool thing is I get to experiment every day. So like Twitter today, I mean, I'm kind of blowing up, but I tried something new because we put out a blog
I
that
love how,
was a
wait,
little hot
wait.
topic.
I love how that's like a side note. Well, I'm kind of blowing up. Hold on. We need to talk about how you're
A little
blowing up,
bit.
please.
Well, without name dropping, some people like to inflate certain situations because, you know, any press is good press, right? um, Sometimes that is a good thing. So that's one thing that I tried today. So for example, I went out and I looked at every single one of our competitors because one of our investors had said, I want to do Slack voice messaging. And luckily we have a really cool community and they've been like, hey, you should try Yak. You should try Yak. He's like, yes, I know, but they don't have a Slack integration yet. So it's really cool that our community was a part of it, but he was right. So that was about, I want to say 19 days ago. And because I was just looking it up. But then I looked and I said, okay, well, who are the competitors in it? And I looked at every single one of them. I tried it all out. I did a full analysis. And so I posted it and I just ranked them from 1 to 8. There's only really 8 of them out there. And of course, I ranked us as number 1. But I was being as objective as I could be. But some people are calling me out, being like, hey, you're not being objective here. So it's been really interesting, right? Like that's something I would have never ever posted before, but I get the benefit now that I'm a startup. I don't have this huge reputation or billions of dollars on the line and revenue that could be lost due to something like this. We get to just test it out and see what works. So that's what I really like about startup life. But it also has its downsides that like I don't have a customer base of like a million people that I could just tap into at any time and just find, you know, found revenue, I guess.
Yeah, I love that you say that because I think, you get to be edgier as a startup. I think you get to, I just in general think people get to be edgier and get to be, more outspoken about what they believe in. But I think it's cool that you're able to live that as a startup. I definitely think when you have a massive corporate brand, everything can and will be purposefully misunderstood. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's really interesting. But I do want to ask something very specific. So you talked about a lot of the kind of professional downsides and upsides to working for a startup. What are some of the personal ones? I know you're getting married next year, so tell us a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about how your personal life has been impacted by being a startup founder.
It's kind of changed, obviously, because of COVID. So everything's a little different than it usually is. I'll start with the downsides. The downside is now that everything's remote, and I mean, it's a remote company, so you would expect everybody to basically be working remote anyway. But one of the downsides is like it never really turns off. So it's almost 5 o'clock where I am, and I'm doing this podcast, and then afterwards, I'm going to continue working. There's no real like, okay, I'm done at this point. It just kind of rolls over. Like as soon as I wake up in the morning, first thing I do is answer all the comments from the Europeans answering me on Twitter. So that's like really. I used to not like it, but I actually don't really mind it as much anymore. I would say it probably bothers my fiance more than anything. So that's why, like, when I'm around her, I need to make sure that I'm like dialing it back and I set a deadline, because if it was up to me, I would just continue working until I fell asleep, like I used to do at our old job. Um, One of the upsides is like people really like to blow up my ego. I spend an enormous amount of time a week building our community. Like I said, when I say I talk to everybody, if they want to talk to me, they're talking to me, whether it's on a Zoom call or through Yak or an email or over Twitter. I am super available, and so that's been so much fun, just connecting with all these people, and I get to talk to so many different founders. It's like as soon as I became a founder, I have this like skeleton key to get into any company that I want. And what's really cool is like our investors and VCs are reaching out to me being like, hey, I noticed that you're talking to these guys. Can you like get me an intro to them? I'm like, wait, this should be the other way around. But I understand now that it's like as a founder, you get to just be like whoever you want. You don't have to like I don't know. I can't really describe it. It's really cool being a founder now that, instead of just like an employee of some other company. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because this is going to get very like psychological self-development stuff, but I think it has a lot
Yeah.
to do with just being able to being your authentic self, right? Um,
Mhm.
like just having founded my own company as well, for me, like a lot of the stuff I do has to do with humor, right? I always say I'm brutally honest and I'm funny, and that's the two things you definitely can count on from me as like a personal, like that's just my ways of being. And I think when you work for a company, a lot of times you try to fit that into
Mhm.
the company culture. um, and now that is the company culture, right? You and your ways of being and who you are as a person always becomes part of the company culture, and it's kind of like raising a child, or like, I guess, an artificial intelligence.
I love your videos, by the way. I learned so much, but because you keep so much of the humor on beat, it makes it like actually digestible. I Marketing is really tough, and a lot of people try to pull it off. And and maybe this is a sidebar, but like I really have to give you kudos because marketing is not something that's easy, right? With all these numbers and there's a lot going on, and like I feel like a lot of people just have this very dry way of approaching it. So I just really that's why I said yes to the second podcast because I really like your style and your approach. Because I remember when we were at Banff, you were telling me that you want to do more video and you wanted to start your own thing, and now you're finally doing it. So I have to like give you the kudos because it's actually working and I actually enjoy it. So
Hunter, we have to do way more podcasts together if
I
that's
know.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I really do. And by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, Hunter and I did a interview pre-COVID, and then the Corona apocalypse, Corona apocalypse, Corona apocalypse. I got it. Corona apocalypse happened, and I was like, "Hey, Hunter, since like none of the things you were supposed to do after to launch, because you were about to like really have a big launch of Yak at South by, let's talk about what you're going to do now." And that's the perfect segue. So you were about to have this massive launch at South by, this booth, and then they canceled. So what are your plans now?
Well, I still have a garage. One of our investors stepped up and he took out all of our furniture from IKEA, and I sent him literally everything for the booths that we had set up, and it's still in his garage. So step one would be getting that back. But step two, I mean, like I said, we're going to be putting out another survey. We have features that are coming out. I don't know if I can tell you, but I feel like it would be good content if I told you. So two big things actually. So one is we're releasing groups, which is officially out, but like we're officially launching it on Product Hunt, which will be a lot of fun because people don't even know that we have transcription. So I'm glad we got to talk about it. But that gives us an opportunity because everything so far with Yak has been one-to-one. We felt it was really important to have that one-on-one connection with somebody. That's why we made a lot of this. We don't have to go into it, but we made a lot of decisions because we feel really strongly that voice is extremely personable, and one-to-one is the most personable you can get. So that's the short version. So groups are coming out, and then based on our survey, we also know that the number one feature that people have been asking for besides groups is Slack integration. So one thing that I am not really announcing, but something that we've been thinking about that you might be really interested in is we've been working with a company that will let us use synthetic voices. So do you have any idea what synthetic voices sound like?
Like robots?
Sort of. So if you give it enough of your voice, it'll create your voice for you. So for example, if you were to here's what we're scheming up. If you were to send me a Slack message like as text, it'll come in through Yak as your voice. So that's what we're working on. Hopefully this like sci-fi fantasy of mine will actually come true, but it'll basically change the way that people communicate at work. It'll be audio first, no screens, no keyboards, everything will just be in your AirPods. So I'm hoping this comes out, but seems like that's like going to be our number one priority as soon as we launch.
That is equally cool and creepy, honestly.
I know there's an education piece, so that way it's not creepy, but I understand.
No, no, I totally love it. I think the one thing you guys, why you guys are such an amazing company is you speak to the remote work group, and you speak to the making work more efficient group, and you speak to the, you know, I think part of making work more efficient is also going towards audio and going towards voice. And I think Corona just amplified that for you guys. I think Corona just amplified that for everyone, right? Like, you have companies now that say, hey, we used to never want to do remote work, and then they sent everyone home because they had to. And they're like, oh my God, holy shit. We're like
Mhm.
5x as efficient as we used to be. Let's do like 2 or 3 days a week remote work. So that was perfect timing for you guys. And did you see any difference, with COVID hitting in terms of customer acquisition?
Well, yeah, I mean, about a year ago, we started this company, right? So we're hitting on what, 14, 15-month-old company. And we've been saying this all along, like the future of work is voice. The future of work is audio. People will be staying at home. Not that no one believed us, but it was just like, yeah, in 5 to 10 years, we'll be worrying about that. Well, now, well, now it is 5 to 10 years from now. So the pitch isn't really remote work is the future anymore. The pitch is voice messaging the future? And that's a really big shift, because we had to actually do a little bit of internal digging and say, like, do people really not know this anymore? And we realized people actually do know. Remote is not only the future, but it's happening right this second. 2 billion people around the world are using it. There's no question about it anymore. Everyone understands the struggles of remote work. So the question is, how do we get people to understand that we are the solution to remote work? And I think a lot of people, like I was telling you earlier, that we're discovering, people of Latin American descent already know this. So I was actually talking to one of the product managers over at Twitter, and he's really a designer product manager, but he came into Twitter specifically for this one really cool feature. And he told me that every day he used to walk over to the other product manager's desk and just present all of his ideas. And he would talk to the other designers and then just be sharing them. Now he can't do that. So his only solution was to go to Facebook Messenger and use audio messages in Facebook Messenger. So clearly there's a problem that he was trying to solve, and that's why he came to us. And so for us, it's like, I would have never, before COVID, I would have never been able to talk to him or probably anybody else at Twitter, especially in California. But now the entire company is remote, and the entire company is trying to find solutions. So it presents this really unique opportunity. Now, don't get me wrong, you only really get one shot, because he had already tried 6 or 7 different other competitors, but the opportunity is at least there that would have never been possible before.
That's awesome. Yeah, COVID is opening up a lot of opportunity and a lot of kind of like hair on
Mhm.
fire problems. Like, oh my God, now we're doing it. What is your general customer acquisition strategy though? Like, how are you guys actually getting users to find you? I know you guys are on Product Hunt. Obviously the cool thing about you is once one person discovers it and convinces their team, you're onboarding a whole team. But how do you get that one person?
Yeah, so it's the land and expand approach. There's several different things that we're doing right now. It's actually changed a little bit since I last talked to you. Well, first and foremost, I can actually I'll give you the top things that we just did today, because it's all coming to fruition right this second. We're doing a lot of sponsorships. I actually hopped out of the SaaStr annual event or the SaaStr something something event, because we might be actually sponsoring them, and we're doing a bunch of sponsors with like podcasts and newsletters. So that's more of top of the funnel. But like I said, everything that we do right this second has to revolve around product market fit. So I'm actually pulling back the reins on acquisition, focusing more on keeping. We're trying to figure out how can we get more people to go from the start of onboarding to the end. So it's more like internal viral loops. So like just 2 weeks ago, we added an internal mechanism. So instead of going through your dashboard to invite somebody, you can actually just click the email button, which is directly on the screen. We stole it from Superhuman. You click the email button and you can just see your whole list, and you just type in an email, send it off. So we're just really focusing right now on product market fit and like internal viral loops of a company, because we have over 3,500 people that have signed up to Yak. So now the question is, how can we convert those 3,500 people into 3,500 teams and get an internal team expansion? So that's really what I'm focused on right now. We just happen to be having a really good day that everybody's hitting us up on Twitter. Our blogs are doing really well. I mean, I'm actually working on our SEO strategy, because before I was actually just talking to our blog guy. Before we used to think, okay, we have no SEO presence. It was yak.chat. Actually, we just bought yak.com. So now we actually, instead of trying to go viral every 5 seconds, now we're actually doing long-term SEO strategy. So that's really like the main ways, is just focusing in on what we've got now, because we need to just fix the leaky bucket, and then we can just start working on everything else. Because one of our videos actually got 180,000 views. So acquisition isn't the problem, it's just retention. That's what we're focused on right this second.
That's cool. Well, since you like my videos, you should check out my R Pirate Metrics Framework video, which is specifically for customer retention.
For sure. I love it.
um, no, I mean, you definitely know more about this than I do at this point. So that definitely was a joke.
I'm going to check it out. I promise.
But
I'm
do check
always
it
willing
out.
to learn.
It is funny. I mean, I think it's funny. I think
I
everything.
mean, sure.
Cool. Okay. So I think we're about at the end of our interview here. I did want to ask you two last questions, which is, one, is there anything else we didn't cover that you were super excited about and you want to tell us about?
Yeah. Because most of your audience is probably founders or marketers, right? I'm assuming. I've seen your videos. Okay. So a lot of founders and marketers keep asking me, so I might as well just tell your audience too. They keep saying things like, I've been on like 3 or 4 phone calls this week, and they keep saying like, how are you building this audience? How are you building this community? A lot of it just comes back to actually giving a crap and just being super genuine. So if I can give any advice, if you have one thing to take away, there's really 2 things. One is answer every single person, especially if you're trying to grow a following. Answer every single person and don't half-ass it. Like, actually, I saw on your bio that you went to FIT. I live in Palm Bay. That's right down the road. What's a good coffee shop, right? That's going to mean a lot more than just a like. And the second thing is just talk to your users. I know it sounds like common sense and you hear it all the time, but like, I mean, I got the greatest advice ever, which was, if you sent out this survey and 76 people responded, email every single one of them. It's just those things that don't scale. Maybe if you ask me in like 6 months, I might have a different answer, but like, these things that don't scale are scaling for us. And so I just can't help but think that, like, Twitter started 2008, 2009, 11 years later, I'm still able to grow a following on there. These things aren't dead. It might shift from like Twitter to LinkedIn or whatever, but like these platforms aren't dead. So I just keep hearing this, like, how are you doing it? And I'm like, this is not hard. I'm just putting in the time, These are very easy concepts that, like, I was told, and I'm like, all right, I'll try it out. And then boom, starts working.
I think you said something so important. One, people always want to find a hack. Sometimes there is no hack. Sometimes the hack is giving a shit and actually doing the work. And like, honestly, I think everything is relationship building, right? And how do you build relationships is you care about people. And I personally think every human does care about other humans, but I think that's so cool. Like, what impressed me the most is when you're like, I answer every email. I email 76 people. I answer every tweet. And I think that is incredibly impressive. That's a little bit Gary Vee style, it's like down to earth, in touch with people. And you're literally hitting on the 2 biggest things that I also see is, like, people don't talk to their customers, and people don't really care all that much, about like the people they work with or their customers. And I find that when you put on that value driven lens, when you're like, okay, how can what I'm creating support everyone else become better and bigger and more awesome? Then everything falls into place and everything you do becomes so, becomes a growth mindset kind of view, instead of like a hacky, like, oh, how do I gain 1 million followers overnight? So I love that you said that. I think that was incredible.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that talk about social media, especially online, they talk about, like, once you have this huge following, and like I said earlier about being a startup, is that we get to just experiment. A lot of people have like 100 followers. Not a lot of people, but like most people that I talk to that are asking me this have like under 1,000 followers, and they're asking me like, well, I don't want to like tarnish my brand. I'm like, guys, we don't have a brand. Like, I've got, I think, 1,100 followers. Like, there is no brand. There is nothing there. Just talk to people. Like, there's no like, oh, well, I don't want to like say the wrong thing, or this guy's being really annoying. It's like, there is none of that. It's like, just take the ego out of it. It's just like, until you have like 50,000, or until you have the blue check. I mean, I guess that's like the standard, right? Until you have the blue check, answer everybody. There's just no reason not to.
Yeah, I agree. That's cool. My last question for you: what's your favorite Pokemon? Pokemon. Man, I'm struggling with English today.
What a question. Do you ask all of your interviewees this?
You're the first one. We'll see how it goes from here. If your answer is good,
I was always a squirrel fan. I don't know what it is, because he's blue and he's got the shell. I don't know. What's your favorite Pokemon? I'll turn it back to you.
blue and not the shell. You know what? I started playing Pokemon with the yellow edition, so it was Pikachu.
Oh, gee.
I'm very basic.
Well, I've got people here, but that's part of COVID, right? Is that there's just, everything's crazy. Sorry, you hear the background.
Basically also the end of our interview. Now that we know what your favorite Pokemon is, we can end this peacefully.
Awesome.
So thank you so much, Hunter. How can people reach you and find you? Where to best reach you? You said Twitter. What's your Twitter?
I've since rebranded myself. I am no longer Hunter McKinley. I am Hunter Moonshot. Everywhere, anywhere that just Google Hunter Moonshot, you'll find me. And if you message me or comment on anything, I will answer, promise. Especially if you say that you're coming from Melanie. It's really a no-brainer.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you so much, Hunter. Thank you, everyone who has watched. I think this was one of the best interviews I've ever done. And I hope you guys tune in again. Whose Pokemon will be next? We'll see.